Good morning, Gordon College. It is so good to see all of you. It's been a while since I've been up on this stage, and some of you who are taking Christian Theo are like, oh my gosh, she's real. I thought she only lived on a computer screen. I assure you, I am human. Here I am. So I teach theology in the brand new School of Ministry, Theology, and Biblical Studies. Yeah. So last year we were on the hunt. We were on the hunt for 2 colleagues to join our department to teach courses for us, of course, but also to collaborate for our future. And I am so thrilled. Like, y'all, we won the lottery. We won the lottery. And so I want to introduce you to my 2 new colleagues this morning, Dr. Jeff García and Dr. Jason Myers. So, some of y'all know this, but many of you probably don't. I co-host a biblical studies and theology podcast called On Script, which is one of the reasons they're like, oh, Amy can do this up on stage. Sure, because this is what I do. I interview theologians and their books and for their ideas and such on a regular basis. So I get to do interviewing and have some fun along the way. So this morning I'm going to put my podcast hat on. So here we go. Hello, friends. Welcome to Gordon's Interview Chapel. This is Amy Brown Hughes, theologian and host. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Jeff García, Associate Professor of Biblical Studies, and Dr. Jason Myers, Professor of Biblical Studies. Dr. García specializes in the New Testament, especially the Gospels, the Greco-Roman Jewish literature. He holds a PhD in Hebrew and Judaic Studies from New York University. And since 2012, Dr. García has worked with the Center for Holy Land Studies as a teaching guide in Israel, Jordan, Greece, and Turkey for students, church leaders, and lay leaders. He is the author of On Human Nature in Ancient Judaism, Creation, and Composition. You're going to see some of their books on the screen behind me. How cool is that? And Composition and Condition, and Understanding the Gospels as Ancient Jewish Literature, and co-editor of the Gospels in First Century Judea. Currently, he is working on a book on charity and merciful deeds in the Gospels in light of ancient Jewish thought. And this next bit, we need to practice a little hospitality. Y'all ready? We can do that.
Oh no, sports team.
Okay, you ready? You know where we're going. Okay. Dr. García is a proud fan of the Yankees. Oh. The Giants. And the Knicks. He does say, however, and you'll be much relieved, that Boston fans are also welcome in his courses. He's originally from East Harlem, but is making his way from Baldwin, Long Island, with his wife, Maureen, who's here this morning somewhere. Hi, there she is. All right. So in his spare time, he is an avid movie and TV viewer and reader who dearly hopes that the new Netflix series will do justice to C.S. Lewis's classic series, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Yes, I totally agree. Fingers crossed. And let me also introduce you to Dr. Jason Myers. He received his PhD in New Testament from Asbury Theological Seminary. His research interests include the social world of the New Testament, Romans and Galatians, and rhetorical criticism of the New Testament. He's the co-author of 4 books, including Voices and Views on Paul, Paul of Arabia, Rhetoric, History, and Theology, and New Testament Rhetoric, and most recently is the author of his dissertation published, Paul, the Apostle of Obedience, Reading Obedience in Romans. He's also the co-editor of the Proclamation Preaching the New Testament commentary series and is currently working on a commentary on Colossians and Philemon for that series. More recently, he's published 3 articles in the landmark 2nd edition Dictionary of Paul and His Letters with InterVarsity Press. And Jason is married to his wife, Lisa, and they've been married for 16 years and have 2 children, August and Phoebe. So welcome, Dr. García and Dr. Myers.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
All right. So, Dr. Garcia, I'm going to start with you. Could you start us off today by telling us a bit about your journey into biblical studies, which for you focuses on New Testament and its relation to Judaism and the texts of early Jewish rabbis? Is there a moment or two in your journey that stands out as particularly formative for you?
Yeah, so my story actually begins as an assistant youth pastor in the Bronx, New York. And I was teaching students and wanted to know more about the Bible. I had no idea at the time what a PhD was. And maybe if I did, I wouldn't have went to get it in the first place. But anyway, and I prayed. I was just sort of saying, like, I would love to learn as much about the world of the Bible as I possibly could to bring it back to my church for their edification, for my edification. Unfortunately, things sort of didn't go as I think they should go. And when I brought that information to the church, they sort of rejected it, actually. And I was lucky enough to, when I started my education as an undergrad, I met a professor who had lived in Israel for 16 years. And he completely just took over my mind in terms of the things he was saying, living in the land, its connection to Jesus and Paul and traveling the land. And I just started following him around, like when you see a duck and its ducklings, and so I started following him around, asking him all kinds of questions, and I felt directed towards the teaching area. And he sort of asked me at some point, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm like, of all questions. He's like, ask me what I want for lunch. What do I want to do with my life? And I said, I want to teach. I feel called to teach at a college level. And he was like, okay, so then you need to go to get a PhD. And I said, okay, show me the way. And he did. He was very formative in my education and the teacher that I am now. And his Romans class was a formative moment for me because I went into Romans as an undergrad thinking that I had my theology set in this nice shape. I knew everything I needed to know. And the first couple of weeks, he came in with a wrecking ball and just wiped it all away. And a number of students had that experience. Some became hard and recalcitrant, and I wanted to know more. And for me, that was exceptionally formative and still a memory that I have that's dear to me.
Thank you. Dr. Myers, I'm going to ask you the same question. Could you tell us a bit about your journey into biblical studies, which for you focuses on the social world of the New Testament and Paul's letters? What are those moments on your journey that were particularly formative?
Yeah, I feel like I'm copying Dr. Garcia's story a little bit. My story also begins. There we go. Is that working? Is that good?
There we go.
I'm going to sit still. It's very hard for me. My story begins as well in youth work and going into a Christian college, wanting to be a pastoral ministry major, and then coming to realize that I really enjoyed the biblical studies classes. I loved getting into books, unpacking research questions and things like that. And I was a youth pastor all through my undergraduate, and I realized I really enjoyed the kind of teaching components of that. The lock-ins, the retreats were not in my giftings. I usually got pretty stressed out about those. Didn't want to lose a kid at an amusement park. Seems bad. And so I kind of gravitated towards studying, and I had a professor in my life who was very encouraging. And so I think my call kind of came through community and people being able to see things that I didn't see in myself and saying, hey, I think you should go on to seminary. So I went to seminary, as many people do, got back on the carousel, as we call it. It's like, one more trip, please. And there I was in a meeting with someone thinking I wanted to go into teaching. And the professor just said, so I assume you're going to get your PhD. And not wanting to look foolish, I was like, oh yeah, totally. That's totally the plan. Had that plan all along. I didn't. But from that kind of moment on, I was like, well, I guess this is the trajectory. In a similar way, I think there's a grace in not seeing the entire path because it is overwhelming. But step by step, faithful steps in the right direction, doors opening kind of led me to that place. But mentors and one step at a time.
That's great. Thank you for sharing some of your journey with us. So both of you travel extensively for research as well as giving tours. Both of you do that. Would you each share a brief story that gives us a taste of how, basically of why you lead tours of students or church groups? You'll see some of their photos kind of scroll up here in a minute that they gave us to kind of show some examples here. The ones that are for the trips.
Yeah, family first.
Those are gonna be later. There we go. Okay. So maybe give us a story or two briefly. Dr. Myers, let's start with you.
I'm on the screen, so I'll go. It might make a little more logistical sense. So I was in Greece this past summer leading a trip for a church group. I just moved from Greensboro, North Carolina. And so we took a team of about 15 over to Greece, the mainland, to follow the steps of Paul and his second missionary journey there through Greece. And I think the thing that kind of enlivens me to traveling and teaching is being able to be in the places where our stories took place, being able to think through what was life like, what were the challenges that ancient people faced in following Jesus in their world. And we, of course, face our own challenges in that way. I think the moment that stands out for me is we were in this small town called Cenchrea, right outside of Corinth, and we believe that this is where the deacon Phoebe took the letter to the Romans and set sail to take it to Rome. So Paul gives her the letter, and it's her job to go read it to the Romans. So the first time it was ever read was in a female voice. And so I'm standing on this harbor and just thinking about how the world was transformed by the faithfulness of Phoebe to carry this letter, get on a boat and sail across the world. And it's those moments where you just see the text really come alive in that way. So I think that's one of the big things for me.
Dr. Garcia?
Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback on some of that. We actually almost met for the first time in Greece because I was with a bunch of college students in Greece this summer, and we just crossed each other's paths. I started doing this sort of teaching guide in Israel mostly. Now that's become a little bit more complicated with what's happening on the ground. But for me, and this doesn't originate with me, but in my mind, I function very much with a incarnational model. And what I mean by that is that when God comes into time and space and Jesus is here, he comes to a specific place, specific time, specific faith, specific language, right? And that's true of, not in terms of the incarnation of Jesus, but in terms of Paul, specific place, language, faith, these sorts of things. And I think for me, if you're in the land, this comes to life, right? So you're walking where Jesus walked, you're walking where Paul walked, and you never read the scriptures the same again. Because when you open a text, you could say, I was there, this happened there. And being able to discuss the context in where it happened is unparalleled in the classroom. The stories that we usually like the most is when we're on the Sea of Galilee. And for the most part, the Sea of Galilee is very calm, it's serene, it's beautiful. Sometimes the boat engines go off and we have a time of prayer. But sometimes you see what Peter and Jesus were dealing with when a storm kicks up out of the eastern sort of side of the Sea of Galilee, and the waves start shaking and the boat starts moving, and you start making all kinds of connections of why Peter was sinking and Jesus, and then you wonder why Jesus was sleeping in the boat. How could you sleep in a boat that's shaking this much? But it's those kind of experiences that allow the text to come alive in a way that sometimes reading it just doesn't allow.
So both of you have really interesting and important areas of research. Can you tell us about maybe one research question that keeps you up at night or gets you up in the morning? Dr. Garcia, I'm going to start with you.
Keeps me up at night. Well, I like sleeping, so this is gonna.
So maybe it's get you up in the morning.
The thing for me that is sort of the undergirding of my research is, so my experience in my original church, when I sort of bring it back to the church, and the church is sort of like, no, we don't want any of this, and so I'm sort of spinning that. I think that some of the questions that scholars ask in terms of Jesus and Paul in light of Judaism, which is still very, very young in New Testament scholarship, is something that people who function in church should be aware of. And for me, I want to know, how can I communicate what I've written with 800 footnotes and 500 Hebrew and Greek words? How can I communicate that to an audience that's not going to know Greek, not going to know Hebrew, but know the value of connecting Jesus, Paul, Peter with his world? That's sort of for me, that is the directive that I have in almost all my research.
Awesome. How are you?
You, Mike. Yeah, one of the questions that I think kind of animates my research is thinking with Paul and through Paul and in Paul, and trying to think about how he faces the challenges in the first century world of gathering together this very diverse community and finding a common life together in Christ. And so I think learning to think theologically like Paul, how does he respond to problems? Because it's not always the same. Sometimes he turns to who Christ is. Sometimes he turns to our relationship with God. Sometimes he returns to peace and reconciliation. And so beginning to think about our world in the life of the church and the life of the world, how do we begin to think about the challenges that face our communities in the 21st century? And I think what I gather from that is that question of how Paul keeps what some might have called the discipline of hope. How do we keep working in the kingdom, for the kingdom, in light of setbacks and failures? So I think those are the questions of what animated Paul, he obviously is a man on a mission. How do we capture some of that spirit for today?
So let's get to know you a little bit more. Tell us a bit about yourselves, your families, your hobbies, your interests. Jason, let's start with you.
Okay. You saw the cuties up there on
Nope,
the
that's
screen?
Dr. Garcia.
Other one?
There we go.
There you go.
So this is my family. That's Lisa. She's a personal trainer down in Boston. And that's our son, Augustin. He goes by August. He's going to be 5 in 6 days. And our daughter, Phoebe, who just turned 3. And so I am really a activities coordinator for a 5 and 3-year-old. Their reviews are brutal. But lots of my life outside the classroom is dictated around, helping them grow. So in that time that I have hobbies, I love, like Jeff, TV and movies. I love watching great kind of cinema and film. I joke that the Oscars are my Super Bowl. So I host a party. We fill out the sheets. We guess. I read all the reviews on what might win. And so I'm knee deep in Oscar research. Typically, a lot of people probably treat fantasy football, fantasy basketball, sports. And so that's my kind of big thing is I love doing that. I love traveling, hanging out with friends, community. I love to cook. It's one of my favorite things to do is create meals for people and see people enjoy eating food together. So that's typically how I spend most of my free time.
How about you?
Yeah, so in terms of my family, I have one wife, which is... Usually you shouldn't go past that, so it's a good number to have. We have 3 daughters and 4 granddaughters. You just saw 2 of them twins that were born a year ago, Bev and Gwen. And then this is the Sunday before we left. The next day, we left our house on Long Island. So my daughter, her boyfriend, and granddaughters are there, whatever. But we left Sunday the day before the semester kicked off. So when I showed up for the new majors luncheon, they asked me how long I had been here, and I said I've been here for 12 hours. And that was the picture that we took before we left. In my spare time, similar, as Jason said, we share similar interests in terms of liking to watch movies, and some of you who have me in class noticed that my background on my laptop is a poster from a horror movie called The Thing, because one of the things that I like that most people have interesting questions about is that I like to read horror and watch some horror movies. Okay, there's a line. I like to sketch. That's one of my sketches.
What? I know, right?
It calms me down. Thank you. And the other thing is, there's going to be a picture put up, but we don't really need it. You can see on my feet. I like sneakers a lot. maybe too much. I definitely have more than one pair of sneakers. Those are the only ones that I brought with me, and there are several at home waiting for me to bring them here to Massachusetts. So,
Do you hear the language a little bit like children?
yeah, yes, yes.
All right, now
Uh-oh.
is our speed round. Here we go.
Yeah, Jason and I were looking forward to this.
They have not seen these questions. They have no idea what I'm going to ask. Off the cuff, quick answers. Are you ready? Here we go. It doesn't matter if you are. Jason, which Disney princess are you?
Elsa.
Elsa. Which one are
Merida.
you? Ooh. Jeff, if you could compete as a professional athlete for a day, who would it be?
Like an athlete or known athlete?
Yeah, a professional athlete of any sport.
Patrick Ewing, New York Knicks.
Rafael Nadal.
Nice. Jason, tea or coffee?
Coffee. Easy.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee, unless I need to stay up at night, then tea.
Jeff, do you think it's important that humans colonize Mars?
I think we have more important things to focus on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, also no. We got a lot of issues to work on.
We've got a lot of
let's
issues.
Fix these ones first.
Teleportation or flying?
Teleportation, more efficient.
Okay.
Teleportation. without a doubt.
Teleportation. Jeff, in the past 50 years of biblical studies, what's the most off-the-wall theory you've heard advanced by scholars?
John Allegro wrote a book called The Sacred Mushroom, in which he posited that Christianity was all a fertility cult where people took mushrooms and got high.
That qualifies.
That's gonna be hard to beat.
That's hard to
I mean,
He's actually a well-known scholar. He's like
Yeah.
a well-respected Dead Sea Scrolls scholar.
oddly enough, not come across that book.
Yeah.
I would go. I forget who wrote it, but that John the Baptist wrote the Book of Revelation.
Ooh, interesting.
That was Bible
Bible.
Revelation.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Jason, if you could bring back any fashion trend, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, seriously? Skinny jeans. Only because I won't have to update anything.
You don't want to update it.
I don't
he
wanna
doesn't
update
want to
anything.
change his wardrobe.
Yeah.
Jeff, what about you?
Throwback jerseys.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff, are you a morning or a night person?
Night person.
Night.
See, I'm a morning person. I do not understand these two.
Nope.
Jason, what's your comfort movie or show?
Oh, comfort movie. Probably my favorite. Lady Bird. Greta Gerwig.
What was that?
Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird.
Oh, yeah. Show, The Office.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good.
Jeff, what's the, accepting the mushroom one, what is the most significant book in biblical studies in the last 50 years?
The book that I continue to learn from is a little-known book just called Jesus, written by David Flusser. He was a professor in Hebrew University. It's a book that I go to. I've read it like 100 times, and every time I go back, there's something new that I see.
How about you, Jason?
I would probably say Paul and the Gift by John Barclay, which looks at the language of grace in Paul's letters. Last couple years it's been out.
Jason, if you were an animal, what would you be?
Jeez, well, these are so like, we were joking that as professors, we like thought out answers.
Yeah.
Like, this is the
Some
worst.
nuance.
A dolphin? Cheetah?
A dolphin?
Yeah, I guess.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Jeff?
So my wife calls me Dove, which in Hebrew means bear.
Aw, cute. All right, Jeff, what's one idea in biblical studies you think needs to die?
That's harsh. Just people covering their mouths.
Yeah.
That needs to die. Kill it. That the Gospel of Mark was written first.
Ooh, oh, look at the
Really?
open mouths. What? Okay.
Pause. Follow up. No, I'm just kidding. Follow up question.
Additional questions?
That the New Testament is against the Mosaic Law.
Yes. Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right, last question. Jason, let's start with you. Why does studying biblical studies matter in our world now?
Ooh, and then a big one. So I think it matters because it helps us to think through, as we've been saying, like where we are at in God's story. So I think we can look to the past and see how God's been faithful through the story. And as we find our place in that story, I hope it builds in us a sense of resilience and trust in God's promises. So I think studying that is kind of activating our life in the kingdom together.
Yeah, similar. For me, the Gospels speak about living your faith, embodying your faith, and I think sometimes in the history of Christianity we've lost that and sort of focused in not always on how we walk. And in biblical studies, one of the things you see in the ancient world is there's the refrain, "I'll know the tree by its fruits," which means I'll know the person by their actions. And I think something about biblical studies reinvigorates that idea for us in the modern period to not only think through our faith, but also to walk and act our faith out.
Thank you both for joining us
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Thank you.
Can you tell how thrilled we are that Dr. Myers and Dr. Garcia has joined us? We are so delighted as a department. And I hope you all get a chance to take a course from one or both of them. And I will just note, plug, adding a biblical studies minor will help you get that hint, hint. Thank you both.
Thank you.
You are
Thank you.
dismissed.
Thank you all.